Okay, so the idea of the first couple of weeks is to give you this bigger picture overview of everything, and then as we proceed in the class, we'll start to look at more details about how to customize and work with these tools. So in the first assignment, we created this house or building, could be commercial, that has a floor and some walls, a roof, and we brought in some components. We brought in families that were walls, windows and doors, along with taking a look at bringing in some of the furniture. So today we'll continue with this assignment 1 as a way of putting the ground in and showing how to work with a typical building section and camera views and applying a material. So let's get started. We want to pick open over here under modules and then go to assignment 1, and let's go ahead and double click and open that up. Once you open it up, you'll see the view that will show you whatever view that you left it in, and this one was the 3D view. Just to review a little bit, you can use the wheel of your mouse to roll the wheel here to zoom, or hold the wheel down to pan. And also what I like to do is hold my shift key down at the same time as the wheel to kind of orbit around. And last week we said we had the view cube and this navigation bar to do the same. So now that we have this building in place, we created it based on, and I'm just double clicking on one of these elevations, right? I'm just double clicking on any one of these elevations. We created it based on the first floor being at 0, and the roof, we created it at 10 feet, but I clicked in here inside this box and I just typed in 12 and enter, because remember, we don't need to type in the feet. And then I clicked in space. So whether it's 10 or 12, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to show you that. And for this, we have to get close enough, or else you might click on that other things that will bring you in a different place. Just so you know, we do have undo command, just like AutoCAD. If you want to undo your project, there's the arrow there at the top left to undo whatever your last command was. Okay, so going back to creating the site, we can double click on the already pre-built level called site underneath floor plans. And what you'll see is that we have these elevation markers that are pretty close to the drawing in this view, because we're going to be putting some landscape, right? So we want to pull these back. We can click right on the box portion of the elevation, hold your left mouse button down on it, and just drag it back a little bit. Let's do that for all of these. Hold your left mouse, click on it, click on the box part of it, hold your left mouse button down, and kind of drag your mouse back. All right, so we just kind of backed up those elevation markers, which show you these elevations. And also want to point out to you that there are 2 different kind of origin points, right? So we have a site project base point, which is there, and then we have the survey base point, which is kind of underneath it. And so the survey point and the base point by default are both at 0. And for the most part, we keep those the same. But sometimes on architectural projects, we have a different survey point because our building is one of many, right? So we could have a specific survey point that's going to be for the whole site, and then the building base point is going to be somewhere away from that point. So if you have multiple locations, and there are other things to use this for that we'll get into more detail. if you want to hide a category, like we want to hide this symbol, let's say, you can click on either the survey point or the architectural project point, right click and go to hide in view category. And see, it'll take that symbol that represents the 0, it turns off the display. And then again, we'll click on the project base point, right click, hide in view category. Now guys, we'll be using this a lot, but what we did was we just hid it in this dialog box that if you look in properties, you'll see it's visibility graphics right there. A lot of people will just type in VG. So if you want to click on edit in the properties palette over here, you can, to get to the same dialog box. I'm going to close out of it and show you that if I type in VG, I get the visibility graphics overrides. And what it does is it kind of hides the whole category of whatever you want to hide. So let's say you want to temporarily hide the roof because you're working inside of it as an option. In this case, we hid the annotation. So there are 2 tabs here, model and annotation. These 2 are the main ones for us to use. Anything that's in the model, like the roof and the floor and things like that, the walls, we could temporarily hide the whole category and then type in VG or come over here under visibility graphics to turn it back on. Annotation category would be all of those kind of text type things like the text and the section that we're going to be working with. We'll actually be coming back in here when we create a section box. So back under the model categories tab, you can look for site and pick that little plus sign there, and you'll see that there are check marks in front of all the different things that you'll have on. But project base point is unchecked and survey point is unchecked because we selected them, we right click, we picked hide in view category. So I just wanted to show you where it came from. Let's go ahead and cancel out of that. All right, now getting started with putting our site on our model, we can go to massing and site, the massing and site tab, and let's click on topo surface. Topo surface. Now with topo surface, you're put into one of these sketch modes again. So make sure you watch out for that. We have a red X, big one. We have a green check mark right there. And this is all colorful, right? A light blue. When you see that, you really just have to know that you're in a sketch mode. And when you're in a sketch mode, guys, if you're in any of these other tabs, everything's grayed out. So this happens so often. Students go to the architecture tab and want to start drawing and they're still in sketch mode. So look for that modified tab that's colorful and go back to see that you're in the sketch mode. Now guys, we're going to stay in the sketch mode for every one of the different elevations for the site. So when we think about the ground sloping, each one of those levels of ground will have a level of dirt and they're going to connect with each other. So many students will get out of this sketch mode to do each one of those levels. Well, the ground won't connect, right? So you'll have space between each one of those ground levels. So the idea here is that by default, we have place points right here highlighted. And we have the beginning elevation, which is 0. If we use 0, it's going to be the exact same height as our floor. So we'll have to kind of like sink it down, but it could be. So let's start with 0, and then later on we'll take a look at how to suppress it when we have our and add our foundations. So we're going to go ahead and start clicking. Now the more clicks that you make, right, the smoother the ground is going to appear and graphically in this drawing. But I'm just going to go ahead and click around, and you'll see that, okay, now I've started this 0 elevation. Now, don't go out of the sketch mode. Just go right up here to the elevation and type in -2. Well, -2 is going to be like -2 feet. And so I'm going to start clicking here around what I just drew to get to the next elevation, which will be down from level 0. Now, if your lines start to fade out or they start to look strange, it's okay. There are a lot of lines that are between these two lines that may or may not appear, but in the end you'll see that the ground is created. So let's go down a little bit more here, maybe -10, so that we're really sloping down on this land. And guys, every time that you click a point, you're establishing a height for that elevation. So later on, each one of these points can be established as a different height. And this is how we start to like slope the land down towards like a walkout or towards the lake, depending, or if you have like a swale or something going on in the landscape. So now I've got -10, and you see how I can't even see the line here, because now, depending on how many feet is between them, it's only showing so many of those lines, those contour lines they're called. But it's okay. It's okay that they're not showing when you go ahead and pick the green check mark, and then especially when you're out of the sketch mode, you double click on the 3D view here, and as you kind of hold your shift key and your wheel of your mouse, kind of zoom back a little bit, you'll kind of see that yeah, there is some slope there that's coming down, and you'll even see it more when you go into one of these elevations. Okay, so let's go back to the 3D view and take a look at what happens when we start to apply materials. You don't see any materials until you go to the bottom left corner. At the bottom left corner, you'll see a like a white box. It's called Visual Style. Click on that box and you'll see all these different ways of displaying your drawing. So right now we're underneath the hidden line, but we're going to go to realistic right there. When you go to realistic, it's going to slow down the drawing a little bit, depending on the computer that you have. And it actually will show you that because we use the generic wall, it's going to be kind of a gray color. But the ground itself is dirt, right? So we may have to put on it now grass. If you have an older release of REVIT, you may not be able to find that material, but you do your best to work towards it. What we're going to do is click right on it once, because if we clicked on it twice, we would go into the editing of it. So just click on your ground here once in the 3D view, and then over in properties you'll see material. Now we could have did this when we were building it, but they wanted to show it to you ahead of time in the hidden view and then realistic. So select it, come over into properties here and pick by category under material, and then click on the little box with the 3 little dots right there next to by category, and give it a minute to load. Now they've changed this around a little bit from one release to another. Some versions of REVIT have these two panels separated, but this one has both of them together, which I think is good. And you'll see that the tab that we go to in the realistic view is the appearance tab. So if we were in the hidden view or some of the other ones, we would be under graphics, which is a little different than showing the actual material under appearance. And this is where we're going to start to learn about working with materials, because really basically it's the same steps when we start to add material to the roof and other areas. So what you could do is find one of these defaults and rename it. But what I'd like to do is just go right down to the bottom left corner, click right on the arrow next to that gray ball right there, that icon, and pick create new material. We could use material that's inside the drawing right now, but we want to create our own. So create new material, and then what it does is it creates this default new material right there. So we want to rename that. One way of renaming is to right click with your pointer on it and pick rename. So maybe we want to call this grass. And if you have a specific purpose for that material, then you would want to get a little more detailed about that material type, because you're creating like a name for that grass for that specific project. And now we want to go to attach a material to it, because right now it's got this kind of generic gray one. So down at the bottom, the icon next to the gray ball, the box, the white box with the strip of blue in it right there, if you click on that, what we're doing in this asset browser is we're attaching a material. Now, the best, I think, folder to go to is this appearance library. Appearance library has, if you click right on the arrow next to the folder, has all of these different categories. So what you could do here is come down to site work, and under the site work folder you'll see all these different types of material that you can use. Now if yours isn't showing like this, the little thumbnails, you can always click on this little icon right here on the top right and come down to click on thumbnail view so that you can kind of see that. Now if you scroll down, you can see all these different grass types, but like I said, you could have searched up here for grass and then the list would go right down to just those things that have that word in it. But you can see there are a lot of things here that you can use for like sand and gravel and any of those type of cobblestone landscape materials. So I'm just going to go ahead and click one of these types of grass, probably this high quality one. And when I double click on it, you might not see it happening, but behind this asset browser dialog box, the appearance tab is showing that color graphics right there. So now I can close out of the asset browser and I'm back into this material browser. Now guys, there are all these different settings that are within each one of these types of materials. Some of them actually have thermal properties to them, but you can see already that there are a lot of things you can change, the reflectivity and the roughness, but just know that you can create your own also. We had a couple of projects that used rammed earth, and we went online and found a really great like little image of that and brought it in to create a brand new material. So now we can click on apply and pick OK, and it should put that grass right there next to the material. When you click in space, as long as you have the realistic view there at the bottom left, you should be able to see it as your grass instead of it being, the ground in this realistic view. We'll come back to materials as we start to make changes to the roof and swap out some of the walls. I mean, if you want to practice a little bit with that, let's do at least one. You can click right on one of your walls and just come over to this properties drop down and swap it out. Swap it out for one of these other types of walls here. Maybe the brick on metal stud. And then if you get close enough to it, you'll be able to see that it is in fact the brick on the outside of that building. Okay, so we placed the ground and we have here the grass on it. What we can do is we can crop this ground if we want to kind of have a better graphics here by using a section box. So over in properties, you'll find section box. Let's put a check mark in that section box and pick apply. Now this section box will help to pull back the view. So click right on the section box and use these inside arrows to kind of drag the whole section box over to kind of slice it and only show so much of the drawing. So sometimes we want to come all the way back and into the drawing and kind of like see a cutout of it. In this case, we just want to go to the edge so we can have like a little model, honestly, of what we want to show. So you may have to orbit around in order to get to those arrows. Sometimes they're not as smooth to cut it back. But if you take all four sides around as you orbit, you'll see that you're kind of like cutting the dirt back to create this kind of little model. Now, the check mark, when you click off of it, the check mark that's in the properties is really establishing the cropping that you just did. So in order for us to turn the section box on and off, we don't want to uncheck it because that will take away what we just cropped. And sometimes you have to be careful with these section boxes because if you build the height of this building up, the section box will cut it off, right? So you won't see if you're building multiple floors. But in this example, we want to click on it once, the section box, right click and pick hide and view category. And you want to use category until we talk about what elements is a little bit later. So use category. It'll turn off the whole category. If we wanted to turn the section box back on in order to edit it, we would type in VG, go find it, and put a check mark in it. So it's off right now, and we have our kind of model here. So if we wanted to start to build here some elements, there is a way of creating subregions. Subregions will give us the kind of the driveway and parking lot, and you can even create a kind of a pool or a lake with it if you don't mind it being the same contour as the land. You know, sometimes in the more advanced classes I've taught at university, we would then suppress the ground and create another level of ground for the water. So in this case, in the massing and site tab, we have split surfaces, which will completely split it like right off. And that could be used to kind of crop the site instead of the section box. But the other way is to use subregions. Now, if you just rest your pointer on subregions, you'll see that instead of cutting the ground itself, we are kind of drawing on top of it to create a surface, and that's how you get kind of the sidewalks and things like that. So let's just draw kind of a generic sidewalk here. We can click on subregions, and then what we want to do is see that there's a panel called draw that gives you options for how to draw that subsurface, or subregion. So we'll just click on rectangle, and then if you get close enough here, there is something else that a lot of people kind of miss. If you look at the bottom left corner of the screen, it does give you a little bit like the command line in AutoCAD where it says enter the starting point of the rectangle. So you might want to look down there sometimes to kind of like see what you're being asked for. So I'm going to go ahead and click here and pull my mouse across and click to create this kind of box that might be a patio surface. And there's my subregion. I can pick the green check mark to show that, you know, I created one. It's going to be the same material as the grass, though. So when you click off of this, well, actually, it's the dirt itself, the ground, because that's what it is by default. So you can click right on that subregion once to select it, and then come over to material by category, and just to get a little bit more practice here, we want to change the material of this, maybe brick pavers or cobblestone or some of those different things. Look inside the drawing to see if there's anything in here that looks interesting that might be in here as a default, but for the most part you're kind of building your library. If you want it to be the concrete cast in place, that's good, but if you wanted to add some kind of cobblestone or some other material, you go through the same steps that we just did to create a new material and then rename it and go into the library and pick up the site work. But for this, we'll keep it simple. We'll click on concrete cast in place, and then we'll go ahead and pick OK. And when you click out in space, you'll see that it is concrete. So just wanted to show you a handful of tools that we can start to use. Now guys, you could go back to architecture and use component and place the component for the trees, but the masking and site tab actually does have a site component icon right there. So when you click on it, you can see all these different trees that you can bring into your drawing. And also, if you need more trees, you can go to load family and then look for the folder called planting. Double click on planting and you'll see that there are files that will hold all of the different types of trees. So the one that's already loaded is deciduous, which are the trees that have the leaves on it. So if you wanted to get some of the conifers here, you could get some of those. There are two different files here now in this new release, so I'd have to take a look at what the difference is here, but there are some tropical ones. Sometimes I'll use the shrubs for inside. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this tree conifer and see here we have a tree that is 30 feet. So each time that you look at the different releases, you'll be able to see the different things that are loaded. It looks like there are only these two, 15 and 20 feet. I'll try this one. There it is. And when you click, it places it. Go back to one of these other ones. I think the Japanese maple is kind of nice. I think you'll be able to see some of those colors. The kind of odd thing here is that sometimes it doesn't show. So you have to roll the wheel up a little bit and roll it back. You see that? Kind of like the image is not showing really well on that pine tree. So I'm going to go ahead and put another tree in here, and just know, guys, that when you start to put more trees, you're going to have a larger drawing, right? See, it should show it. Maybe yours will show it before you click, and I've found that some of these trees that come with it, you can't see them, not only when you are placing it, but even after you place it, it just doesn't show. And so I haven't it depends on the file itself, it depends on the tree itself, because these are all showing. So hopefully you'll get to the ones that actually show, and you can see that this pine tree, this new pine tree they have, is kind of like shows, but then I have to get back close further and kind of zoom around. So these are all families that someone else has created, so you have to kind of work with them a little bit. I don't think it's worth it for me to have this in here, so I'm going to click on it, and you can click the little red X, or you can pick the delete on the keyboard to delete it. So go ahead and design your own landscape. You can hold your left mouse button down on it and move it around, or you can use the arrow keys. When you have it selected, you can use the arrow keys, and as you orbit, you'll see that the tree is actually kind of attaching itself to the site. Okay, so that will show you the beginning of creating your site and and placing the trees on it. Let's go over to, and material, let's go over to the first floor plan, and you'll see that the trees are going to show up. This is where, if you don't want the trees in your floor plan, which we wouldn't, anytime you add something new, you might have to turn off the display of it in a different view. So I'm going to click on the tree once, just one of them, right click, pick hide in view category. And now what I'm going to show you here is that we can go to the view tab and pick section, because we're going to make a building section through this. We'll pick the top here of the building on the outside, pull your mouse all the way down and click. And now what you did was you just created a building section. And these two little arrows show you which way it's going to face, and the dash line is how much of it is going to show by default, or you can change that. Now if you look over in the project browser, you'll see that section was created, so you can open up that project browser view and double click on section 1. You could double click on the head of this section, but it's a little easier when you're first starting to double click on section 1. And so there's your section. It's showing the section through the drawing. You will see any furniture or doors that you placed. You will be able to kind of like open up and crop this a little bit. So as we start to work with graphics, we'll start to work with this a little bit more. Going back to the roof level, I want to double click on the roof level to show you that we have a roof, but the roof level is only showing a specific range. So in this video, we're looking at all these different tools that we can use as we start to work with Revit. And if we want to see the whole roof in this roof level, we'll have to change the view range. So over in properties, scroll down and look for view range and pick edit. Now what this view range dialog box is showing you is that there's a top, which is 7'6" for that level. There's a cut plane, which is 4 feet. And then there's a bottom, which is 0, which is at the roof level. And then there are other ways of looking down even further below it when we start to work with foundations especially. So if we want to see more of this view, we'll have to change the top range right here. Let's change it to something really tall, like 30 feet. We'll just type in 30. But we still won't see it because we have it as a cut plane. That's the cut that goes through that level in shows the view based on that cut plane. So we'll make that 30 also as well. So both of these are going to be 30 or 30 feet. When we pick apply, there it is, pick OK. Now we have our roof. We also, though, remember, just as the review, we have the underlay that's showing the first floor. So if you didn't want the first floor to show, you could change the underlay right there, the base level, to none. For now, we want to see it because we may want to do some work with it. But if you're getting ready to print and set up your paper, you want to pick that as none to make sure that you have all the objects showing. Okay, and also in this roof plan, depending on whether this roof plan is going to be used as a site plan or just a roof plan, again, you can click on your tree, right click, go to hide in view category. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is the camera view. So let's go to the first floor plan. In the first floor plan, we're going to set up a camera that's going to start, let's just say, at this corner and view this active corner that has doors and windows and furniture. But you can go ahead and create the drawing as you'd like. Maybe even bring in one of those shrubs. There are some nice interior plants online. I'll post some in the discussion group that I that I created for us to share some of those families to bring them in, to load them into our drawing. Not as many interior plants as I would have liked to see. So let's go ahead and select and create a camera. The camera view is actually right underneath the 3D house view right there, so you can get to it from the top, or in the view tab, go underneath this 3D view and pick camera. And then what you're doing is you're setting up where the camera is going to be placed first. So click one of these corners wherever you want it, click and let go, pull your mouse away from that camera, and you'll see that you're establishing kind of the cone of vision right there, and click. It'll automatically bring you into a new view right here under 3D views, and you can crop it. You can even hold your shift key and your wheel of your mouse to kind of like orbit around to get the best view. And there are other things that we're going to be learning about as we get into more details about presentation. But I would recommend that you rename this view to whatever that view is. So interior of the living room, or else eventually you're going to have so many views that are called 3D view 1, 2, 3, and then you'll wonder what your view is called. And then eventually you're going to use these for your sheet. Now, inside this view, you can change it to realistic down at the bottom left corner to see what it looks like. We don't have any materials yet on the walls, and we do still have our grass that's at the same level as our floor, so we'll need to kind of press that down a little bit so that we can get to our foundations. So let's go ahead and push that grass or that dirt down a little bit so that we can move it around as we start to put our foundations here. So we'll go to massing and site, and this is called a building pad. We'll need to go to the site plan or the site floor plan right here, double click on site, and then because we have an overhang, we probably want to temporarily turn off the roof. Sometimes I'll do that. There are other ways of working with this, but I think to get used to using hide and view and bringing it back, we can click on it, right click, pick hide and view category. So we just turned off the roof so that I can create here this building pad. So let's go ahead and pick on building pad. And again, we're in the sketch mode, and this is a part of understanding the software, is knowing we're in a sketch mode. Most of the drawing is going to turn gray, and in the draw panel we have some choices on how to draw the building pad. I'll go ahead and use the rectangle tool under draw and click on the outside corner of the building, and then the opposite corner, because we're creating this kind of building pad that's going to be lower than 0. And then because we're still in the sketch mode, we can come over to this height from. So this is the height from that first level, and let's make it a -1, just to bring it down a little bit further. Now, if you have a building that's shaped with like an L shape, or maybe have some curves in it, you can use some of these other tools to create that building pad. One of my favorites sometimes is called Pick Lines, where it actually picks the lines for you, so you don't have to try to draw those curved walls. We'll use this later as we look at other tools, and also pick walls or pick lines. Okay, the other thing, now we're done with this, the height, and we established where it was. We can pick the green check mark right there. We might want to turn our roof back on in this view, so we'll type in VG, and under the model category we'll go down to R's to find the roof, put a check mark in front of roof, pick apply and okay, and there's our roof. Now when we go back to the interior camera view that we saw, the 3D view right there, you'll see that, we don't see that grass anymore because it kind of brought it down and suppressed it. And you'll see that when we start to build our foundations, the dirt is going to go through our basement, and we'll use the building pad to kind of push it down even further. Okay, then practice with some of those tools that we looked at today. Each week we'll be adding more tools to our palette. You can start to create your individual drawings based on what we learned. So today we looked at creating a site, and I'm going to go back to the 3D view, using the section box and applying material, creating subregions here, creating a section, taking a look at view range, camera views, subregions, realistic view down here to kind of continue to build this project and show you some of the tools. We will be creating projects as we start to learn more of the tools to kind of apply to the projects. Right now we're practicing with a model. You can swap out your walls and create different combinations based on the things that we've learned. Okay, have a good one. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next week. Keep in touch if you have any questions or need help.